United States Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan was in Nigeria at the head of an interagency delegation to the Binational Commission meeting in Abuja. Working groups at the meeting hosted by Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyeama focused on security cooperation, government and democracy, as well as economic development. At the end of the Binational Commission meeting, a joint communique was signed between Nigeria and the United States of America. One of the key decisions in the joint communique is the fact that recognizing Nigeria's strengthening democracy, its large population and dynamic economy, and its importance as a peace builder and peacekeeper, both nations seek to capitalize on areas of shared interest. The United States is expected to benefit from Nigeria's leadership in promoting security, stability, and democracy on a continent brimming with emerging opportunities for United States trade and investment. Nigeria is expected to benefit from United States political support, security cooperation, technology, financial resources, and humanitarian and development assistance. The two countries developed a detailed agenda to guide discussions on a proposed goal paper, which will identify bilateral efforts. United States Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan and Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister Geoffrey Onyeama at the end of the meeting separately had a media conference. It is the highlight of that joint media parley that we will bring to you on the program today. Thanks for joining us on Diplomatic Ties. Ominodan is my name.
It's clearly evident that in spite of the change in leadership on both sides, our foreign policy objectives to promote stronger ties between our two countries is firmly on course with the very, very strong and committed leadership and guidance of our two presidents.
Nigeria's success does not depend on its military effectiveness on the battlefield alone. It requires improvements to the economy and governance off the battlefield as well. In other words, a comprehensive response is necessary to build a better future in the Northeast and in Nigeria as a whole.
Like the parties in Zimbabwe to address their political situation peacefully, without violence, and I personally am focused here on this trip on Nigeria and the recently concluded Binational Commission, which is our bilateral dialogue with the government of Nigeria, and we've had a very successful meeting today, a lengthy series of meetings, and that's been my focus today.
So when we say at the end of the Binational Commission meeting, is it all just about talk, no walk?
Talk, no walk. No, there's been a lot of walk with the United States and our support for Nigeria, not just today, but over the last couple of years and going forward into the future. I would say this is the next step in our walk with Nigeria. It's important for government officials at all levels, senior levels and more mid-levels, to engage in dialogue together. It took us a little while to get here to Abuja, but it's the first year of the Trump administration. This is an annual Binational Commission meeting. So it's important for us to sit together, to talk, to renew the trust that exists between our two governments, between our leaders. It's important for us to look each other in the eye, reaffirm the values that we share, our commitment to a shared future for both of our countries, cooperating on security, our economies, investment here in Nigeria. So it was a successful day. It's necessary for diplomats to talk and government officials to talk, but through our engagement, our talking, we're hopeful that others will do, both in government and outside of government, do a lot more on the ground here in Nigeria to promote security, trade and investment, develop the economy, and help grow the relationship between our two countries.
Quite a robust joint communique, I must say, that has been signed. But a lot of Nigerians, just like the media, will ask, when? They look open-ended, no timelines. Can you give us an idea when some of these things will start playing out?
Well, there are timelines that are forced on us by the calendar, by the electoral calendar. For example, there is an election that is scheduled here in 2019, which is a key focus for everyone, for Nigerians and for Americans who are concerned about Nigeria. We want to do all we can to support the Nigerian people in their continued experiment in democracy, which every democracy is, including the United States. We have our own challenges. We have not cornered the market on a successful democracy. We're perfecting ours as we speak over 200 years. Nigeria's experience with democracy is not as lengthy as ours, but just as important. And we're looking to share the lessons that we have learned, work cooperatively, and press forward for what we believe is a bright future for the people of Nigeria and for the relationship between the United States and Nigeria. So there will be progress. I'm here. My presence here is a reaffirmation of our commitment to make progress in that relationship, not just talk about it. We haven't set firm deadlines for all of the long list of things we're going to do. That will depend on other parties and their actions. But our commitment is firm, and it's sealed in writing in that communique that we signed. So we're looking forward to doing a lot more work through our great embassy here, our mission in Nigeria, and in Washington. The U.S. government, from President Trump on down, President Trump has spoken to the President of Nigeria. We are very committed to this relationship and working hard to improve it.
All right, Mr. Sullivan, what are the new projects in the pipeline?
What kind of projects?
The new projects.
New projects.
Yes.
Well, for example, I mentioned at the in the press conference just a few moments ago, we're going to establish a commercial and investment dialogue to involve U.S. business, U.S. banks, U.S. financial institutions, in a dialogue that will be facilitated by the U.S. government with the Nigerian government, and also involving Nigerian private sector parties, so that we expand the commercial relationship between our two countries, which is extremely important. Our goal is prosperity for Nigeria, prosperity so that the young children of today who have been victimized by ISIS and by Boko Haram will have a profitable future for themselves, will have hope for the future, won't be tempted to engage in violent acts that are so destructive. So we're working hard to create those types of commercial opportunities, investment for the benefit of the Nigerian people, but also for the benefit of the United States, a strong economic relationship with this enormously important country. Just in terms of population, the size of the market, extremely important and only growing larger and more important over time.
As a new focus on binational commission, I mean, definitely you said this is going to be happening every year now. Is it going to affect in any way AGOA? That's the African Growth Opportunities.
Well, it's complementary. It's an effort. The commission is an effort by what we call in Washington the interagency. All of the various U.S. government entities, whether it's Department of State, Department of Defense, Department of Commerce, USTR, Treasury, Department of Justice, that have an interest in our relationship with Nigeria. This binational commission brings all those entities together. Not just our great embassy here in Abuja, not just the State Department, but all the parts of the U.S. government that have an interest in Nigeria, meeting with their counterparts in the Nigerian government face to face to discuss these issues, which is important. It's not merely channeled through the Department of State, which is the way we do it on a day-to-day basis. It's an opportunity for all levels of the U.S. government with an interest in Nigeria to engage with their counterparts.
Pretty much agreed in the area. A lot of it is, really sort of best practices and support from the U.S. where there can be support from the U.S. But the areas of cooperation pretty much are priority areas: the security, the economy, and governance. But we've added to that, one or two other areas: the Niger Delta, for instance, election issues, and so. Basically, those areas.
At the AU, Nigeria was highly commended for being a country that put together a joint military task force that has succeeded. And now part of what the joint communique is talking about is assistance in the area of military. What is the new direction that will be deployed?
Well, okay. I mean, the planes that have been supplied, are really going to be game changers. The Super Tucanos, because it's not just the planes, but it's what they're coming with, and also the capacity building, the training that's going to come with it. It's going to be state of the art, technology that we're going to have, and some of the military people believe that if we had received this kind of equipment earlier, we might not actually be in as dire a situation as we are until very recently. So that's going to be a real game changer for us.
How confident are you that the planes are going to be delivered, considering the fact that the U.S. Congress is considering Nigeria's human rights records?
Well, as far as we know, it's a done deal. The Congress did not raise any objection. In fact, the Deputy Secretary of State was talking about his personal outreach to some of the key figures in Congress. So, I mean, of course, as they say, it's never over until the fat lady has sung, but we would like to think that she is clearing her throat and about to sing, that it's more or less a done deal.
What other areas for cooperation are you looking at? Yes, the Boko Haram, the fight against Boko Haram is one. Are you also looking at migration issues? Do you know that just over the weekend we buried 26 girls in Italy? First of all, there has been criticism that the Nigerian Foreign Affairs Ministry was not particularly present. Is there an explanation for that?
Yes, there is an explanation for that. Our embassy in Rome was actually fully engaged all the time with the Italian authorities, and I think that some of the information that they were receiving, was not very accurate. So they were not informed when the burial was going to take place, But if not, up to that point, there had been total and full engagement on our side by the Nigerian embassy in Italy. But coming back to a specific question about the areas of cooperation. I think that the most important, I mean, they're all important, but I think the area of trade is really going to be important because, trade, the economy is going to address so many of the other problems. The issue of migration, a lot of it has to do with the poverty levels in our country, and even the conflict that we have. A lot of it is also just to do with economics. So what we really have to get right is the job creation aspect, of the thrust of this government. And we're working very hard towards that. You've heard of all the major steps we've been taking in the context of ease of doing business, attracting greater foreign investment, and the U.S. government buy-in and engagement with us, that's the government itself, is sending a very important signal to the U.S. private sector because they often take the lead from the government. And so the vote of confidence that we're getting from the government, we're hoping is going to really rub off and make a big impact with the private sector and greater investment. And of course the AGOA, the African Growth Opportunities Act, is also another window that we have to exploit more to export our goods for market access, especially the U.S. market. So that's really key, and if we can make the strides that we need to make as quickly as possible, our population is growing, that's going to take care of so many other areas.
Just quickly, there was something he said in his opening statement at the beginning of this binational commission. He said, talking about the economy, additional progress is needed to reduce protectionist barriers and ensure predictable and transparent regulatory environment. How is Nigeria going to react to the fact that they've been asked to reduce protectionist barriers?
Well, we do that anyway, and we have to do that because we're members of the World Trade Organization, and that's what the WTO is all about, reducing, protectionist barriers.
Is that in our favor?
Well, it's not a question of, it's cost benefit. it is in our favor because we want to access other people's markets just as much as we want other people to invest in our countries. And if we don't play by the international trade rules, we're going to be shut out. And we don't have the capacity to, to go it alone. So it's absolutely important. One area that they are also, focusing on in that whole context of, certain trade and fiscal issues is also with the foreign exchange market. They're having issues, and a lot of other countries with, with two levels, a parallel market and the official rate. They obviously want to see total convergence, because you then have a playing field, a situation where, maybe some investors might be able to be favored with the official rate and others not. For them, this distorts the market and has issues, to do with, with competition. So those are some of the things they want us to address. But they understand, some of the challenges that we're facing, that we cannot overnight open up our currency to allow it to float, you see. So, but they want to see that we are working, towards a greater convergence of our foreign exchange markets, So, so you're absolutely right. I mean, but that is really where it has to all be decided. We're making huge strides in the World Bank ratings on ease of doing business. We're moving in the right direction. We want to move further and in the right direction, and we just need more investment. We need to create jobs for our people. Otherwise, it's just going to exacerbate all the other problems we have.
Let's come to governance now.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Minister, since the inception of the US-Nigeria BNC in April 2010, what would you say is the major achievement of having this national commission?
I would say the greater investment in the country.
How much of it? Can you tell us?
Well, as I mentioned today, in my speech, we were already talking about almost $1 billion, invested in the ABIA, in the power sector, there's another investment that's being done, I think, also in the power sector in Lagos, and these are very tangible, because as I said, the U.S. private sector really looks to the U.S. government to give direction, Their confidence in markets, a lot is going to be based very often on, what messaging they're getting from the U.S. government. And so it's really, really important to have that level of confidence. And, during the General Assembly in New York, we had a large business forum, and a large number of U.S. businesses were there, and a lot of them that invest in Nigeria. And they were all making it clear the confidence they have in Nigeria, notwithstanding the various challenges we're facing now. They really do believe that Nigeria is an attractive market, and they want to be there for the long term. And a lot of that, as you know, business is all about confidence, And so that's why the BNC is important, for us to keep engaged with the U.S., to know those areas that the U.S. might have problems with, that we might need to address, and to ensure that we're more or less on the same page, because the U.S. is a very, very important business partner for Nigeria. And so the BNC is the main institutional framework for our cooperation, and it's a comprehensive cooperation. All the different sectors are involved, so it's huge. It's very important.
In the last African peer review, African leaders came up with a consensus that Africans should look inwards and solve problems within them, and Nigeria has really taken a step in this. We know the position of Nigeria in terms of ECONEC, the role they played in the Liberian elections, and they are still playing, and that the US says they want to assist us because of we have advanced in democracy, kind of. What interest do they have? Do they intend to influence our democracy?
No, I mean, a lot of the questions, we're sort of looking at what the U.S. can do for us, but I think even more important is what we can and should be doing for ourselves. And our development will really depend on what we do for ourselves. You see, this is not a charity, The U.S. investing in Nigeria is not just for Nigeria. It's predominantly it's not even enlightened, it's self-interest, And that's the same with everybody. That's what trade is all about. So we have to look after our interest. We have to push our interest. We have to try and get market access. We have to try and... There are many competing markets for investments. Every country is looking for investments from other countries. So that's why we have the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, to make Nigeria the attractive bride, for all these potential investors seeking all that money.
So as a quick follow-up to that, sorry to interrupt you, are they happy with the progress? Our partner is happy with the progress that we're making, especially along the lines of democracy?
That's a very good question, and the answer is yes. You heard it all today. I think they're extremely happy, and of course, it coincides with the Anambra elections that just taken place, which shows, Mr. President's commitment to genuine democracy. Mr. President is not about imposing results on states. He just wants a level playing field, transparent elections. And the Americans, have really congratulated that, and I think they get that message. And those are some of the building blocks that people don't, often see that, that bodes well for this country long term. Mr. President's approach of putting in place, these building blocks, transparent, honest elections, the security, and these are the kind of things that resonate very well with the international community, and will make Nigeria a much more attractive place to do business in. And they also appreciate a lot of the efforts we're making in other governance areas. We're part of the Open Government Partnership. They were very, very happy about that, the Americans, and they see that that Nigeria, together with the US, is one of the largest democracies in the world. And as they pointed out again, that it's not even just about Nigeria, that what happens, because they understand also that a democratic Nigeria means also a more democratic West Africa, probably a more democratic, Africa, a more stable Africa, and that investing in Nigeria is really also investing in Africa.
Well, I'm smiling.
Just one question, and it's out of curiosity. I want to know: is the U.S. government, are they still buying our crude oil? I'm sorry to ask, because there was a time we heard that they would stop purchasing crude oil from us.
Yeah, well, no, because they're producing. The U.S. now is exporting crude oil.
So they're not
It's a net exporter of crude oil. I mean, we have Bonny Light, sulfur, and I understand there was a time that they, had started coming back because the shale, production was falling. But by and large, the U.S. is self-sufficient in oil production.
That's about that on the program today. I believe you had it insightful on Diplomatic Ties today, the media conference separately held by United States Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan and Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister Geoffrey Onyeama. Bye-bye.